Good morning to those in the Americas, good afternoon to those in Europe and Africa, and good evening to those in the Asia-Pacific region. Today we will focus on the HyEx projects, on decarbonizing the Chilean mining industry with renewable ammonia. Today I will be joined by Asunción Borrás from Engie and Pablo Wallach from Enaex to discuss this project, as well as some other projects that are ongoing in the collaboration between Engie and Enaex. Please note that this session is recorded, and the recording of this session will be placed on YouTube after the session, as well as an article will be written and published on the website of the Ammonia Energy Association, so ammonia.org. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat that you might have during the webinar, and maybe I will pick some of them and discuss them with our panelists. Next slide, please, Andrea. So Chile is a quite interesting country in the sense that even though there is some local production of ammonia in regiones, Chile also imports quite some of its ammonia demand. However, if we look at the renewable potential of Chile, and that's what you can see on the map on the bottom left, and so this is the levelized cost of ammonia production from renewables expected by 2030, based on the work of Fasihi et al. We can see that Chile is one of the locations which is colored most red, and basically red means the lowest levelized cost of ammonia from renewables, and blue means the highest levelized cost of ammonia from renewables. So it means that Chile will probably be one of the locations where renewable ammonia production makes sense at the earliest. Also noting that there is indeed already a demand to import ammonia for the current mining industry, for example, to make nitrates. If we then look at the right-hand side, this is the work of Armillo et al. He and a co-worker, they calculated what would be the levelized cost of producing green ammonia, so renewable ammonia, in various locations in Chile and Argentina. And what they actually found is that in a while, the levelized cost of ammonia could be around 500 euros per ton. Noting that the electrolyzer price that they took is relatively on the low side, but similar prices are already offered in the Chinese market. And if you then compare to this levelized cost of renewable ammonia production to the cost of importing fossil-based ammonia, so SMR-based ammonia production, we can see that this might become feasible on the short term. Also noting that in the very recent years, we've had these supply disruptions due to some plants closing unexpectedly, and also in the general logistic hiccup in the recent years. So it means that these projects become very, very interesting. The main thing, however, is that we need to show that renewable ammonia plants can operate based on intermittent renewables. And for that, we first need a pilot plant to show that this is actually possible. And for that, I would actually like to give the floor to Asunción Borrás and Pablo Wallach to explain us what this first pilot in the HyEx project is all about. So Asunción, the floor is yours.
Hi, well, I think we can introduce ourselves first. I'm Asunción Borrás and I'm part of Engie. I'm leading the business development team for hydrogen projects here in Chile. And Pablo, maybe you can introduce yourself and then I'll share the presentation that we've prepared together.
Thanks, Asun. Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Pablo Wallach. I work at Enaex. I'm responsible for technology, R&D, innovation, and corporate marketing, and also leading this fascinating project for a few years now since its beginning.
Thank you. So I will start sharing my screen. We've prepared together a presentation. I guess it's now in presentation mode. Perfect. Well, the idea today is to do a quick introduction of Engie, for those who don't know the company, to do a quick introduction of Enaex, and then introduce the project and speak about it. So we'll start with the Engie part. Well, Engie is it's a company, it's an energy company from France, with the purpose of accelerating the transition towards a carbon neutral economy. We have 4 core activities, which are renewables, networks, energy solutions, and thermal and supply. Hydrogen is inside the thermal and supply and energy supply business unit, and we have a footprint that covers 4 regions apart from France, where are the headquarters. In Southam, we are focused in Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru, and I'm based in Santiago in Chile. So Engie in Chile, it's the 4th of the power generation companies in the country. We are over 900 employees in the country here, and we have different kind of assets. We have generation assets, we have transmission lines, we have 2 ports, we have a liquefied natural gas terminal, and most of our assets are located in the north of the country, which is also where the mining sector is, and in Mejillones, which is, I'm not sure if I can use my pointer, let me just use, and this here, Mejillones, is where Enaex has the plant. We have also Tocopilla, a lot of assets and a lot of renewables, and we are in the middle of a transformation of the company, leaving the coal assets towards a renewable-based generation matrix for the company. Our targets for 2026, I think, it's to have or 2030, it's to have a 3.4 installed capacity of renewable energy in the country. So in terms of hydrogen, this is the hydrogen targets that we have announced for the group globally. We would like to have for 2030 4 gigawatts of installed capacity of green hydrogen production, 700 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines, 1 terawatt hour of storage based on hydrogen, and also over 100 refueling stations, just to cover what the mobility sector. And this is these are some of the public projects that we have in the world. Right now, which is in South Africa, this is to do the retrofit of a mining truck with Anglo American. This one is already, I'm not sure if we reached the commission already, but we were in execution. YURI project, it has also have a positive final investment decision, so it's moving forward. This is one with Yara to produce green ammonia. And in here in the country, we have the HyEx project, that is the one we have together with Enaex. Hydra, that is similar to the Rhino one, to the retrofit, but with the mining conditions that we have here in the country, which is in a high altitude. So the equipment behaves differently. The altitude and low humidity of the desert affects the efficiency of the equipment, so we needed to try. And Wally project and now I will leave the floor to Pablo so that he can introduce Enaex.
Thanks a lot, Asu. Well, Enaex is a Chilean-based blasting service company. We are part of Sigda Corporate. It's a large industrial group in Chile. And over the years, we have become also a global company today. Today, we're the 3rd largest blasting service company in the world. We mostly serve the mining and civil works industry, but we also consider ourselves as an energy company. And that's because we use the chemical energy from the blasting agents and transmit that energy into the rock at the mines, so we can have a proper fragmentation that the mining company that can then use to process the rocks and get the ore out of those rocks. So although we're a blasting service company, we also believe we're an energy company. Next one, please. And the next one. I will not stop too much here because Kevin already introduced a lot around Chile and its potential for renewable energy and renewable hydrogen. So countries like Chile, Australia, and other ones are expected to be efficient green hydrogen producers. Next one, please. And in the particular case of Chile, we happen to have the driest deserts in the north of Chile with the best solar radiation in the world. And in the south, we also have very steady and powerful winds in Magallanes. So there are two main poles or regions where many projects are being studied or prepared in the country. One would be in the north, close to the mining region, another one in Magallanes in the south. We happen to have about 70 times the renewable power potential compared to our total country energy needs. So there is a big potential for Chile to export sun and wind in the form of hydrogen or one of its derivatives like ammonia. And that is one of the goals of the government and our hydrogen strategy looking toward 2030. Next one, please. So all these conditions have generated a formal green hydrogen strategy that was announced or published in late 2020, in November 2020. And the former Minister of Mining and Energy at that time believed that Chile is the ideal place to produce green hydrogen and its derivatives. So the goal that this strategy stated was to have at least 5 gigawatts of electrolyzers in development or installed by 2025 to become the cheapest hydrogen, green hydrogen producer in the world by 2030, and to be in the top 3 exporter or among the top 3 exporter by 2040. And one of the actions that they defined for this to happen, one initial action was to give $50 million for studies for projects, and it's very good to see that we, as a HyEx project, got a very good part of those $50 million for the first studies. Next one, please. All these conditions and this strategy generated a lot of boom or a big boom of green hydrogen projects announcement, but you have to be careful. Most of them are still in a very early stage of studies or pre-feasibility studies. Remember that still the projection for green hydrogen to become competitive enough to replace fossil fuels are by the end of the decade. So to get there, we still need renewable energy to become cheaper, and we need electrolyzers productivity and technology to continue improving. So most of the real time or expected time for this project to go online will be around 2028, 2030. Actually, only 4 projects have been submitted so far for the environmental approval, and from those 4, only 3 have been finally approved. And from those 3, 2 actually are part of this project. Next one, please. Now, what do we have to do with, as a company, with hydrogen or ammonia? Well, ammonia happens to be the main raw material to manufacture, to produce the blasting agents that we use at the mines. So as we have no gas in the country, or very little gas, we import the ammonia from countries that are rich producers of ammonia, like Trinidad, like the US and other places. So we currently import about 350,000 metric tons per year of ammonia from those countries. That's around 15 vessels per year. And for that operation, we have our own ammonia terminal, our own ammonia tanks. And from there on, we produce ammonium nitrate, which is the main blasting agent that we use for the blasting service at the mines and civil works. All that is located in Mejillones. The thing is that together with that gray ammonia that we're currently importing, we're also importing a very large carbon footprint. It's around 750,000 metric tons of equivalent CO2 per year that we are importing into the country and then transmitting to our customers. But we're very convinced that that can change and that we can use the renewable energy that is available in the country to change that. All yours, Asun.
And that's where the HyEx project takes a place. The idea is, this is the big game of the project, is to have a production of 700,000 tons of ammonia per year based on a renewable power generation asset dedicated to produce green hydrogen in the Atacama Desert, and then to transport the hydrogen through a pipeline to Mejillones, where the ammonia plant will be located, and then feed the Prelex plant. This is the second phase of the project. and we foresee that this phase will be in operation by 2030. Half of the production will be to cover Enaex existing needs, and the other half can be used in other sectors like mobility or for exports or fertilizers. This will mean to reduce 1 million tons of CO2 per year, and this is equivalent to, for example, 300,000 cars. But to start with the project, we've divided and started with a pilot plant, because this is a huge investment, this is a huge plant, and we need to prepare also the market. So for that, we've commenced with the first phase to feed the Prelex plant by producing 26 megawatt of electricity, which is 3,200 tons of hydrogen, to feed 18,000 tons ammonia plant, and then to transport the ammonia to Mejillones, where the Prelex plant from Enaex is. This first phase will be located in Tocopilla, and the main difference between the first phase and the second one is the configuration. The first phase, the hydrogen plant is next to the ammonia plant, and the ammonia is transported to Mejillones, while in the second phase, what is transported is the hydrogen, and the ammonia will be located next to the Prelex plant. This is because of the needs of the ammonia Haber-Bosch to have a stable supply of hydrogen. We can do it in the first phase while connecting to the grid or using a battery system to store electricity and to feed the hydrogen plant. While in the second one, we're using the pipeline to do the stockage of the hydrogen, and with a difference in pressure, we can supply a stable flow of hydrogen. Back to you, Pablo.
Thank you. We are convinced that by doing this first phase, we will be able to make the large industrial world-scale plant earlier and more efficient. And also, we are convinced that this project has very particular conditions that make it a very real and relevant opportunity for the green hydrogen industry development in Chile. Some of them are that there's already a demand, so there's no this egg or chicken dilemma. We are already consuming hydrogen, and we're the largest ammonia consumer in Chile. We already have the infrastructure to handle that ammonia, because we already have the tanks and the terminal even for future exports. We have years of experience handling and distributing ammonia in the country. We are very much connected to mining, which is the largest industry in Chile, and it's an industry that is making real effort and having real commitments to decarbonize and lower their carbon footprint. We're in the north, very close to the high radiation areas, and more specifically, we are in Mejillones, which is considered, if not the best, one of the best ports for future ammonia or hydrogen derivative exports. But also, next one, please. We have a real experience with another plant that it's called Cachimayo. Cachimayo is a very small town close to Cuzco in Peru, close to Machu Picchu. And there, we happen to have a plant, an electrolyzer plant that is running now for 60 years. Next one, please. This is probably the last standing electrolyzer plant from the old generations. Next one, please, so we can see the pictures. There it is. So this is already an electrolyzer hydrogen facility that it's built and in operation. It's an 18 megawatt electrolyzer facility that it's been running for 60 years and over now. And it has the complete process. So from energy, we produce hydrogen using electrolyzers, then we produce ammonia using a Haber-Bosch process, then we produce ammonium nitrate, and then we serve the mining industry in the south of Peru. So this has given us a real experience handling electrolyzers, handling peak shaving, experimenting with the flexibility of the Haber-Bosch plant during the night, and so on. So we have today already a running electrolyzer plant and people with experience running and managing and servicing and maintaining and with maintenance in that plant. So it will not be a totally new technology for us. Of course, this is 60 years old technology, and there's a big difference in terms of efficiency and improvements, but the experience is there. Next one, please. Now, one of the problems for phase one is that if a large-scale plant doesn't seem to be economically feasible until the end of the decade, a small-scale plant or a pilot plant is much worse because of scale and because we don't have yet those renewable energy costs or electrolyzer efficiencies and technologies. And that's why we have gone around the world looking for partners and looking for grants and support to make this happen and to have this first phase up and running so we can enable phase two to be earlier and more efficient. That's why we have been asking for grants from the government, from other governments. We have been working with our techno partners in order to see how much efficient we can do this phase one. Also been asking for international financing and grants, and of course working very closely with the local mining industry to ask for early adopters for green explosives in this case. And we're very happy to say that we're already working with Antofagasta Minerals as a partner in this project. So we're making our biggest effort for phase one to be a reality, to become real, and to have a reasonable gap or premium cost compared to the gray products, so that we can start introducing green products and green services in the mining industry in Chile as soon as 2025. Next one, please. So where are we today with the project? As Asun mentioned, it's going to be located in Tocopilla, phase one, next to the already existing solar plant. We already started the FEED stage by the end of last year, and in parallel, so we expect the FEED engineering to be done around September and to have a final investment decision about 2 months later. So by the end of the year, by the end of 2023, we expect to have a final investment decision. And if that's positive, we expect to have 2 years later our plant in operation. So by the end of 2025, hopefully. In parallel, we are certifying the energy that we use in Tachimayo to have green hydrogen and green ammonia and green blasting agents in Peru, not by 2025, by the end of this year, 2023. And also we are working with our suppliers to bring the first tons of blue ammonia into Chile and start having a cleaner ammonia and blasting agents also by the third quarter of this year. So we are trying to pave the road with blue ammonia, with green ammonia in Peru, then with phase one, to get to the industrial phase with green ammonia full capacity by the end of the decade. So I guess that's it. Thanks a lot, and hopefully we can continue sharing about the next developments of the projects, and we're really putting all of energy to make this project a reality.
Thank you so much, Pablo and Asunción. So first of all, I think it would be a good idea to go back to the existing plan. So first of all, congratulations on the project, the HyEx project, that it has gone through all these phases already. So looking at the Cuzco plant in Peru, recently there was an announcement that there was a PPA signed that all the electricity provided by Engie will be certified renewable, and then Enaex will be the off-taker for that. So with regards to the offtake of this probably low carbon or even renewable ammonia, are there any showstoppers at the moment for this offtake, Pablo?
For the one in Peru?
Yes. Or any opportunities, anything that needs to develop?
What we're doing in order to have it a really certified low emission ammonium nitrate and blasting agent is that, of course, doing what we did with Engie on the energy side, but also on the chemical side, we are installing new additional catalyzers and then certifying and measuring the life cycle and the emissions from the current product, and then to have the new emissions so we can have it certified. The reality is that the product that we're producing today is already using the renewable energy. And once we have the catalyzers, it will be cleaner, but it's already, the process is already working. What we're working this year is to have it certified and have the additional catalyzers. That plant, as mentioned, is working for 60 years now. So the production is already being sold. So we don't expect that that will change too much. It will be even a good news for our customers to have a cleaner product from that plant.
Thank you for that, Pablo. And that plant actually runs on alkaline electrolyzers, basically also based on technology developed some time ago. And Asunción, for the electrolyzers on the new project, so the HyEx project. So what are, for this project coupled with this solar farm, what are the most relevant criteria for Engie to choose the electrolyzer technology for this project?
For us, mainly is what makes sense in terms of economics and efficiency. So far, for example, for the first phase, we've included in the environmental permit the alkaline electrolyzers, because the footprint of the electrolyzers is bigger than in the PEM technology. So we need to evaluate what is more restrictive in terms of emissions or footprint or anything for the environmental permit. But so far we have not chosen yet the technology. We're receiving different proposals from different suppliers. What we see is that the PEM technology is still more expensive, and due to the competitiveness issue that we have in the first phase, I think we will go for the alkaline at the end of the day. It's a proven technology, and it's more cost efficient, while the efficiency is not that bad. I mean, in the alkaline.
That's quite interesting that you say that, especially because some proponents of PEM electrolysis and some of the other electrolysis technologies say that alkaline electrolysis is not flexible enough. Might be true, might not be true, but in your case, are there any ways to mitigate this flexibility issue, or are you expecting that the alkaline electrolysis could actually cope with this intermittency?
We expect that the alkaline electrolysis can cope with that. Anyhow, in the first phase, we will produce 20 hours per day. So it will be 4 hours just to stop the electrolyzers. The idea there is to produce during the 20 hours all the hydrogen that needs the Haber-Bosch plant, and then to have a small storage of 1 ton of hydrogen to supply during those 4 hours to the ammonia plant from this tank. And the ammonia plant will work at 40% of load during those 4 hours, while the other 20 will be at 100% capacity. In the second phase, this is another story, but it will be for 2027, the construction more or less. So then we will go with a PV profile, and then that will be the real cycling of the electrolyzers. So what we're also planning to do in the first phase is to test the electrolysis equipment, see how they behave, same as we will do with the Haber-Bosch.
Thank you so much. And indeed, it's still a field that's very much moving. If you look at the ammonia technology, there are some proponents who say we need hydrogen storage for flexibility. And there are even some companies that are thinking about fully making the ammonia plants flexible with, for example, electric heating to go fully flexible. And probably the reality will be somewhere in the middle of that. Pablo, you also mentioned that the plant in Cuzco already has some intermittent renewable input. So could you take us a bit along the operating procedures of this plant and how flexible is actually this plant?
Yes. Well, it's not that the renewable resource is fluctuating in this case, because we're connected to the grid and most of the energy is from hydro. But there's a big, because of the way that the energy is costed in that area, you have a big peak that you would like to avoid. So what we do is peak shaving. And what the team has managed to do over the years, and that's their full merit and experience, that they are able to almost put in standby the ammonia plant with a special process over for about 4 hours, and then put it back again. So it's not necessarily because of the intermittence of the energy in this case, it's to avoid the energy or the power peak. So what they are managing is through an insulation and standby process to have a flexibility on the ammonia side for that peak shaving.
Maybe to follow up there a bit as well, of course you have an ammonia plant, you have an electrolyzer, but you also have a nitrogen purification plant. So is that plant also, did you also find a trick for that plant to operate more intermittently, or do you expect that plant to run more continuously?
No, that one, the idea is that one runs more continuously.
Thank you for that. So looking also at the Asunción, I don't know how globally you're active, but right here we have a project based on solar PV. You also have a solar PV project at the other side of the globe, the YURI project. Are there any specific learnings from the both projects that are transferable in this case, and what are the key differences there?
Well, the main difference is that the ammonia plant is existing in the YURI project, while here we need to build it from scratch. But indeed we worked globally together with the electrolyzers team. We have a technical department based in Europe, where we coordinate all the conversations with suppliers, so that we can take advantage of the different knowledge that we get from the different projects. Think that we started with a hydrogen business unit that was a global business unit, covering the different countries where we worked since the beginning. So we're used to working in coordination with the other countries, and take this coordination to learn about what are the barriers that they're facing, or things that we need to improve, all the lessons learned from the different projects. So it's really important.
Thank you for that. And indeed, every location has its own specific legislation, also technology choices, yes, preferences for sure. But already in looking at Chile, you mentioned 2 locations, right? You have this location you're working on right now, Mejioles. Sorry if I butcher the name there. And then in the very south, you have Magallanes, which is based on a renewable wind profile. So how would you think those are different on the hydrogen perspective?
They're really different, because one is based in PV in the north. This is the driest desert in the world, the Atacama desert. And the south is based in wind. Both for each technology have a really good capacity factors. The thing is that with solar you have even it's 8 hours or 9 hours during the day, each day, it's a more stable generation compared to wind. Although, so you need to couple. In the south, there is a challenge to couple when the days that there are no wind, because we don't have a 100% capacity factor. So in that sense, as the storage capacity and to supply a stable supply of hydrogen to the ammonia plant becomes more challenging than in the north, where that we can couple a little bit more easier with even more for the second phase, because obviously our end game is to go for the second phase. We can do it with a hydrogen pipeline. We have also the distance that is good to do it in the north. In the south, that is more restrictive, because the area where the projects are focused is smaller in terms of distance, so it's more challenging to have a hydrogen pipeline to do this stockage of hydrogen and to supply this close to base load supply of hydrogen to the ammonia plant. So it's different.
Thank you for that. And indeed, it's very different to have a wind profile which might have an overall higher capacity factor than the solar field, but you don't have wind every day, and it's also not an annually the same profile. It can change per year. What I've seen from the projects that I've been listing is that for every wind park you would still have like a very small solar park, just to, you know, if the wind is not blowing, you still have like a little bit of backup. So Pablo, at the ammonia utilizations or production side, do you have expect any differences between this daily fluctuation from solar, or some seasonality in that as well, versus wind-based projects?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so on the ammonia production side, nitrogen purification is probably steady, but your Haber-Bosch plant, it can probably fluctuate. Do you expect any key difference in operation between a solar-based resource versus a wind-based electricity resource? Is there a different strategy that you're thinking about?
I think Asun already talked about that a lot, but I think the difference of what Asun said is in solar, you might have a few hours or less hours a day, but you know it's more stable, it's more known, so you can design and plan for that and have the needed storages. For wind, although the capacity factors are very good, you might have more uncertainty. In this case, in the north, for phase one, it's full solar, so we were, at least for phase one, we are not having those comparisons. I mean, we did the comparisons to see what will be the best configuration, but now that we have a definition, that's it. And the good thing about solar in the north is that, as Asun mentioned, it's pretty much known, so you can design and prepare for that.
Thank you for that. And maybe to follow up a little bit on the ammonia technology that you're going to use. Quite recently, it was announced that this will be based on the KBR technology.
That's correct.
Just in general, wondering what were like the key criteria to evaluate the different technologies out there, and why the decision for a specific vendor?
Sure. I would say there are a few very good and reliable vendors and technologies out there. The final decision was not easy, and it had to do with what would be the best fit in terms of technology with the engineering company, with the probability or ability to ask for other grants, and all that combination. It was not just on the vendor itself, the technology. It was a mix around economics, around timings, around the relationship and the alignment with the engineering companies, the ability to go for grants, and all that. So at the end of the day, it was the full package, and this package was the best option that we were able to find at this time.
It's interesting that you mentioned indeed also the integration with the local engineering companies. So also just wondering about Chile as an environment to develop such projects. Pablo, can you take me along with the kind of environment in Chile for this kind of projects? Are there any legal frameworks, showstoppers, or is this really, do you really see that the government is also pushing this agenda?
It's a very great question, and I don't have a definite answer today because we are living through it. We're in the middle of that. I would say that there are a lot of projects going on. Many projects struggling to move forward. There's not an old or a stable legislation. I mean that every project has its own challenges depending on where it's located, depending on what its base is, wind, is it sun, water source, and so on. So today there are a lot of discussion on how to get that balance between trying to move forward, not stay behind, use the great renewable energy power that we have, move toward decarbonization, but at the same time, respect the environment, respect the places that those projects are going to be, and follow the rules. So And in many cases, those are new ones that didn't exist before. So that balance is, I would say, it's a big discussion nowadays for the companies that are in the midst of those big engineering projects and the authorities and the communities. So that's where we are today. So it's an ongoing process.
Thank you for that. And Asunción, are there any specific learnings that you've had so far from the project development in the renewable space in Chile?
Indeed, in fact, one of the I think one of the critical paths in the development is the environmental permit, and what we see is that at least in the Antofagasta region, the environmental system is used to evaluate big projects, industrial projects. They have the experience, and we've learned a lot in the renewable development there in Antofagasta. So we have a good collaboration with the environmental authorities there, also with the communities. As you saw at the beginning of the presentation, most of our assets are based in the north of the country, so we have a good relationship there. We know the stakeholders, and that's really important to have the social license of the project to move forward.
Thank you for that. And indeed, the social license is also a webinar where we have focused on that quite a lot. And indeed, permitting can be as time consuming, at least as technology deployment. And just also a question that you probably get quite often, but when you're working in the desert, where do you get the water for your hydrogen? You expected the question probably.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. Well, look, in the first phase, since it is in Tocopilla, in the Tamaya sector, and we have some coal plants out of operation nowadays, we have a spare capacity of desalinated water that was used for the thermal generation there. So we're using this spare capacity of water to transport it to the Tamaya sector and use it for the plant. For the second phase is different, where we're starting now the development of the second phase. You see that 2030 is quite far away from here, but considering the size of the project, it will take like 4 years at least to build all the PV plants and the ammonia plant and the pipeline and the electrolysis plant. So we're starting today the development, and this is one of the key topics that we have on the table today. Are we using an existing desalinated water plant? Are we building a new one? We know that there will be also needs in the north for future consumptions. So are we taking the opportunity to join some other future consumptions and build a bigger plant for desalinated water? So these are the questions that we have on the table today.
Yes, can totally imagine that, and especially considering that desalinated water on the total project cost is not a big consumer, but you want to do it right.
Exactly.
And Pablo, also on the permitting side, you already mentioned low carbon renewable ammonium nitrate as products. So you also mentioned something on the catalyst side that you will introduce. Am I right that you are trying to get rid of NOx, N2O emissions there, Pablo?
Right, we will lower them a lot with those equipments. We already have those equipments installed in our plant in Chile. So today, the reason that we're focusing so much on ammonia is because we have managed to reduce the carbon footprint and the greenhouse gases also to other equipment. So today, the outstanding thing is the ammonia for the one in Chile. In the case of Cachimayo, we already had the electrolyzer part, and the part that was missing was some additional catalyzers, which we are installing now. So that's a combination.
Thank you for that. And indeed, this is probably a pathway that most plants will go through. It's cheapest to get rid of your NOx emissions, and then actually the hydrogen, that's the more expensive part to decarbonize. So that's also quite a logic step to take. And in Europe, the situation is kind of similar. Now moving on to the product that you make. So first you have the mining industry, the ammonium nitrate, but in the future you also make ammonia for more ammonia than you would actually consume in these plants. So are you also considering to directly use ammonia then as a fuel for example, some of the equipment, the mining fleet, or is it something that you think it's probably more on the longer term agenda?
It depends. It will depend, but we're absolutely open and looking forward to it. Actually, most probably the final size of the project will be even bigger than 700,000 metric tons per year, probably around 1 million. And so we will have about 350,000 metric tons for our own consumption. And then there will be a lot of availability. And we already have partners that are planning to export that to countries that don't have the same access to renewable energy as an energy vector, and also for mobility in the country. So if the idea will be yes, but it will depend if the technology is there by the time that we have to decide the size to have ammonia available for mobility in the country. Of course, where in Mejillones, we have today 30,000 metric tons of capacity for ammonia, but we can go up to 50,000 very easily. We have already the permits to go up to 50,000. We have the terminal, so we could use it for bunker, for vessels, but it will depend if the technology gets there by the time that we have to decide the size. But yes, it's part of the plans, but it depends what technology will be by then.
No, that's indeed very clear, and maybe also to come a little bit back on the question for the water as well that was posed. So the nice thing about downstream applications of ammonia is also that you produce quite some water in the plants. So that's actually a quite nice byproduct if you import ammonia. And now actually I want to move a bit to indeed what I already introduced, the energy applications of ammonia. So ammonia is also considered a fuel, and as Pablo already mentioned, it really depends on the deployment of such technologies. There are certain sectors where it's moving a bit faster. Probably the maritime sector is a first market. Some areas are thinking about even having ammonia for cracking, others for direct use in, for instance, coal-fired power plants. At the moment, gas turbines. So I'm wondering, like, from the other side of the equation, we have talked about the opportunity of Chile a lot, but Pablo, do you also see a risk, and is that also a reason why you developed this HyEx project, that the new markets might make it more difficult to even get ammonia in the first place to Chile?
That's also an ongoing process. If technology moves forward and you start seeing more demand for ammonia for these new uses, then yep, it will be harder to have ammonia. On the other side, those same expectation and this boom is generating a lot of ammonia projects. So it's hard to define where it's going to be. But for us, ammonia is our main raw material, so it's part of our strategy to integrate into ammonia production to secure our supply.
No, for sure. That's definitely true. And also from Engie's side, so do you see this transition indeed from these fossil plants, and you've been operating quite some of them, maybe to ammonia as a fuel locally produced, or is it still in the early developments there?
We think it's still early development there. What we don't see for our assets is to co-fire the coal and the ammonia, because we have the purpose of leaving the thermal generation and go directly to renewable. So we don't see the use of co-firing. However, there are some other countries that are foreseeing that, and we'll see how it develops. For our transformation is just to go to renewables and see how with the storage we can give a stable supply of electricity to the system, how we can do it.
That's very clear indeed, and indeed countries like Chile are some of the best suited for renewable electricity generation, even if you have to include some electricity storage there. Other countries like for instance Japan, energy importers, but maybe also in Northern Europe, the equation might turn out a bit different. Now let's look a bit back. a few years back. This project, the HyEx project, was just starting in development. If there is anything you could change about that, Asunción, what is a learning that if you would start over again, what would you advise?
Probably manage expectations of timing internally, because it's difficult to start with a project while at the same time creating the momentum of the market, of the regulation, of the government, of the support. Everything takes time, and when you create a new industry, you have to be patient and manage the timing expectations. Because we've heard a lot, you're going too slow. Hey guys, this is not a mature market. This is not like doing another renewable project or another industrial project. This is creating the industry while at the same time developing the project, facing all the barriers, changing the regulation to overcome those barriers. So it takes time. So that to me will be one of the key things that I would change.
That's very nice that you say that it goes too slow from the renewables perspective. But if I look from the other side of the equation, I keep a list of all the projects that have been announced. I'm actually quite happy that you will most likely reach FID, and this is actually a project moving along. Whereas quite a lot of projects are announced, and well, you don't hear anything ever again. And this is actually capacity that's being built. So as long as it's being realized, for us that's a win. Where it's just 1 year late, well, it's still being realized. So
exactly.
So Pablo, from your side, if you could go back 5 years from now or something like that, what would you advise future you, or back in the day you?
If I could go back in time, I would give much more attention and focus on Cachimayo. I think that we had a jewel there that we didn't know that it was so important to gain experience and testing and flexibility and move forward, because we are all running and doing our best effort to have this phase 1 pilots or projects up and running. And an important comment there, despite everything that we have talked today, it's still not an easy project. Even if we are in the north of Chile, even if we already consume ammonia, even we have some grants from local government, even if we're getting grants from other places, it is still not an easy project because we're not there with cost yet, especially for a small scale. So by no means we want to communicate that because we are here, it's done and to generate full expectations. But going back to Cachimayo, having that experience and having, if everything goes well, we will have a plant up and running, which we already had 60 years ago. So taking more experience and putting more focus on Cachimayo, maybe I will make a better use of that experience from the beginning.
That's indeed interesting that you mentioned that, because this is actually the last electrolysis-based plant in the world from the old days, because in the 2010s, the plant in Egypt closed down in 2019, the Kima plant. The plant in Zimbabwe closed down in 2015 because the hydropower electricity would be used for other things. So this is actually the last of the old plants. So that's quite interesting. Now looking forward a bit to maybe 2030, Pablo, from your perspective, what has been realized and what are the ambitions?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So we are in 2030, let's say.
Okay.
To the extent that you can look forward, what has been realized in 2030 and what are the ambitions by then?
I would love that by 2030 we have the project finalized and up and running, so we don't continue exporting gray ammonia but producing green ammonia from local renewable sources, and not only for our plant but for mobility and to reduce the carbon footprint in the different areas that we can influence where we operate, that we also are exporting and helping our country to develop a new industry based on renewable energy, and therefore also helping other countries in their decarbonization process by exporting sun and wind from Chile. So it's a very nice story because Chile used to be a country that used to have el salitre, I don't know the name in English, saltpeter or something, that was a fertilizer. And when Haber-Bosch or ammonia or synthetic fertilizers came along, that industry ended. And now the same process might give back a very important industry to Chile, but now for other uses. So as a Chilean guy in Chile, that would be for me a very nice end of the story or next step of the story.
That's indeed quite interesting that you mentioned that story about the Chile saltpeter. That's part of the story. And indeed, even before that, there was this guano, so the bird dung that was on these islands. So basically, full ships of these just dug up this guano, just transported it all around the globe. Chile was and Peru, they were actually quite getting quite rich of that. And then by the end of the 19th century, the scientists came together in the government and they said, "Oh wait, we are running out of this stuff. So now we actually need to make something synthetic. Otherwise, by the 1930s, everybody's going to starve." And that's actually when the Haber-Bosch process was invented. So Asunción, by 2030, when would you be happy? Will there be some sector coupling maybe between some countries where Engie is active?
Well, I think so. In fact, we're preparing for the development of the second phase. We need to secure off-takers as soon as possible. So we're collaborating with our team in Europe to connect to the different companies that may use this ammonia from the project. So it's something that we will do all together. There is a central team that will help us to arrange all the offtake and the partnerships for the project. So it's not a local project. It's a local-based project, but in a lot of coordination globally. It's a global market.
Very good indeed that this is like a global value chain and not just a standalone project by itself. Mm-hmm. All right, so we are moving close to the hour mark, and I really want to thank both Asunción and Pablo for bearing with me. Before we end the session, Andrea, can you pull up the slides? So I already want to announce the next month. So there is a link in the chat already. So now we were in Chile, one of the interesting locations based on solar and wind profiles, but actually next month's webinar on India is also seeing a quite interesting opportunity. One of the largest fertilizer consumers at the moment, but they also have a lot of opportunity to produce renewable ammonia at home. So we will be discussing this with ACME, the Indian Hydrogen Association, and a researcher who has worked on fluctuating renewable ammonia production in India. So I really hope that all of you will sign up for this webinar. And the last thing that leaves me to do is to once again thank my speakers. That's Asunción and Pablo. Thank you for bearing with me for the entire hour.
Well, thanks to you for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation. Say hello to Trevor, and I also want to thank a lot the team that is working on these projects, very passionate people that are day to day giving the best energy so we can have this project to see the light. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.